Greetings, campers, and welcome back to another Camp Legend video for Lorcana. My name is Gibbles and Bits. With me is Dead Broke Nerd. This is part 2 of our 4-part series as we lead up to the release of Into the Inklands, the third set from Lorcana. Real quick, if you like what we're doing, you like the content, you're enjoying the deck guides that we're going through and all of these creative deck builds that we're giving you before the release of the date, smash that like button and, subscribe to the channel because you'll get more notifications anytime we put out more videos, and we'd love to have you around for longer than just the one video. Hopefully you stick around for more than just a couple minutes, or you can come see us over on Discord where we're discussing all of these new deck ideas with our community and all of the different games that we're playing in our starter set series and everything else that we've got going on for the channel. But today we're going to be jumping into each one mid-range list. Previously, we did our aggro lists. We're doing mid-range here, and then later we'll do our control and our combo lists in part 3 and 4. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the deck list and get it rolling. Switching it up here, we're going to have DBN go first, take us through his Chern and Burn list here, and you'll notice that Chern is spelt the way it is for a very specific reason. So DBN, go ahead and take us off.
That's right. That's right. We got Chernabog, baby. It's the card I'm number one most excited about.
It's beautiful.
It's a cool artwork character. Really cool effect. I do love me some graveyard mechanics. This is a card that I have no idea if it's going to be good or not. I mean, the reality is like, I just got to get my hands on it, but I've theory crafted up a list that does play from a pacing perspective like a mid-range deck, but it is extremely proactive. This is bordering into combo territory, but at the end of the day, if it's playing against an aggro deck, it's trying to slow the aggro deck down. If it's playing against a control deck, it's trying to put the pressure on. That means it's mid-range, so I'm just going to go ahead and, at least in the way that I envision in my head, pretend like that is the mold we're going to fit. So just a quick brief on Chernabog. The basic concept here is for every character card in your discard pile, you pay 1 less to play it. It costs 10. If you get 10 in the grave or more, it's free. Whoa, that's crazy. And that's what we're playing towards. How are we going to do that? By churning through our deck. We have so many characters in here. I'm just going to rattle them off. We've got Simba, Future King. We've got Cinderella, Knight in Training. We have the Huntsman. We have Tinkerbell, Tiny Tactician. And if we wanted to, we could also add in the big Simba that allows you to discard stuff too. And then on the action side of things, we're trying out Ransack of all cards. Classic terrible card from first chapter. It was never good to play. It might be good here, but more importantly, we're playing a whole new world. Why are we playing a whole new world? Well, the obvious reason, right? Which is that you can discard your hand, draw 7 more cards. Your opponent gets to do the same. We're never going to be in danger of decking ourselves out, not just because we're running 68 cards, although that's mostly because I don't know what to cut yet. There will be cuts, but I just don't know what to cut yet. So I'm
the
just
nature
throwing
of
everything.
Deck building.
I'm just throwing everything in there. But more importantly, because we want to dump as many characters in the grave as fast as possible and also dig for our Chernabogs. So we have the Bayou as well. Whenever character quests while here, you draw a card and then discard a card. Lots of things that draw and discard. That's the idea. We fill up the grave. There's a lot of things that could go in this that are not in this right now. Potentially Mufasa, because we have a lot of characters, mostly characters. Potentially Perdita, which comes in and allows you to bring 2-drops out onto the field from your graveyard. Cool. But what we're doing here is we're dialing it in on a whole new world. And we're doing that by putting as many early game shift targets of 5 cost or higher into the deck. We have the Queen and the Queen. And so that 5-drop Queen can come in on turn 2 and immediately sing a whole new world. Why is that cool? For most decks, it wouldn't be cool. But for us, we want to dump everything in the grave. And something that you might not have considered, your opponent will have just carefully mulliganed at the beginning of the game and shaped their hand in such a way that they know exactly what they want to be playing. They will have chosen, probably, to have kept a few cards that they hope to play in the next, 3 or 4 turns. Well, now they have to go and deal with whatever hand they draw off of a whole new world. And meanwhile, you are advancing your win con towards these Chernabogs. If you have a Chernabog in your opening hand and need a whole new world, don't worry about it. You'll find another one. And when Chernabog comes into play, it shuffles all your other characters in the discard pile back into your deck so you can keep looping. Now, the extra upside of all of these shift characters is that they're strong characters in and of themselves. So we have the Queen, we have Kita, we have Beast, Tragic Hero. Now we're not shifting him in, but he just draws cards and he's basically an auto-include and steal.
He's great.
Just a great card. We have Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, that can shift in on turn 4 and immediately do some damage. Classic card, Cinderella. We're not really doing much with the singing outside of A Whole New World, but it is a resist 2 that quests for 3. And then here's the piece de resistance, okay? The Sheriff of Nottingham. This is how we don't die to enemy aggro. This is how we beat evasives.
This is one of you and I's favorite cards of the new set. We've both been very, very high on Sheriff. And early testing has come back very positive from other people in our local circles that just dealing a damage off of discarding a card when there's so many ways to do it and so much synergy, even within just the one color that is steel. This is a fantastic, it's just a fantastic card. It doesn't have to exert it, put itself in danger. It just has a static effect that you can abuse to high heaven, and this deck is perfect for that.
Right, and with this many quality characters, it does bleed into like a good stuff strategy where you're just playing down strong, independently decent characters, but with the potential to randomly, when your opponent's least expecting it, flood the board with a free 10 cost that quests for 3 and has ridiculous stats. Chern Burn. That is my list. And can I just say, of all the lists we're going to cover, I don't think this is going to be the strongest list, but this is the one that I am just so unbelievably amped to get my hands on and start testing, start refining, and start playing free 10 drops.
Yeah. And this goes for, by the way, for all of the decks that we'll go through that we went through in our last aggro deck or our last aggro video, and all of the decks that we'll go through for mid-range, control, combo. Please, for everything, ignore these costs up here because the set hasn't dropped. The set hasn't dropped yet, so all of these costs are like perspective, or there are maybe some people that found a way to get their pre-ordering and found their way to get their hands on some cards, and they're trying to take advantage of like early like TCG online prices for singles. So that's what that total up there is based upon. Don't be deterred away from trying to build or trying to obtain the cards from this for any of the decks that we're kind of suggesting here for building, because they do not cost $504. I promise you, they cost way less than that. All of these cards will become a lot more readily available, either for your own picking up or for buying singles. So please do not look at that cost as like I'd love to play Chernabog, but for $504, $24 a piece, probably not. Like that.
And if you
won't be that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Now, obviously on Pixelborn, everything is free anyways if you get that set up. But one thing I will say too is maybe a video we'll do probably in the first couple weeks after we get our hands on stuff is going to be looking at some budget lists that use the new into the Inkland stuff. I already have.
We love budget lists.
We love budget lists. We're budget friendly players. We have friends and family that want to try the game out and get started, and we want to be able to point them in the right direction. I've been cooking up a weight set list using the new Titans.
I love weight set.
Yeah,
I gotta see that.
It's pretty cool. Anyways, we'll get back around to that. But Gibby, show me your mid-range list that you are excited to be testing out once the new set hits.
All right, so we're going to go through my Dastardly discard list. And similar to DBN's Chern Burn list, this kind of floats within that gray area of like a mid-range to kind of combo deck. We're going to justify it for the sake of the series as a mid-range list, but you could, like, if you wanted to, you could look at this as like a sort of like a solitaire-ish kind of combo list as well. But I DBN can attest to this. Since set 1, I feel like I might be one of the earliest adopters to recognize discard as a play style that had legs back when there was very little cards to support it at that time, but it was my set 1 go-to deck was green amber. So
Gibby was winning. I'll say it. Gibby was winning local events and topping local events with discard before there was intended discard decks. We're
Right.
talking had ironed everything out to abuse Sudden Chill and You Have Forgotten Me, which at the time I believe were the only things that discarded.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Prince
Yeah,
John didn't exist. Lucifer
nope,
didn't exist. So
nope,
there wasn't
no
support for this.
Hypnotize.
No Hypnotize. There wasn't support for any of this discard style. But oh, how times have changed. How
They
far we have
sure
come,
have.
baby boy. And we have
That's
got
right.
so much discard synergies here. It was almost tough to narrow this list down, which is so fun to be able to say. Now, the typical discard list that was prominent in Rise of the Floodborn in season 2 was a combination of emerald and steel. And there is definitely going to be a version of that deck that is, I imagine, will be within the top couple tiers of competitive decks, just because of the good quality nature of the cards that were included in that competitive list. They're really nothing from that list is fading out. If anything, they've just got a couple more options now. But what did get the biggest upgrade was the Amber package with discard supporting that, with a couple great cards that we're going to go over in this list. This is very much a mid-range discard list, so similar to DBN's Chern Burn list, we do have the Queen at 1 drop and the Queen Commanding Presence at the 5 drop. This is the only that I can think of aggressive 5 drop being shifted down to a 2 drop. And that's what makes this just so unbelievably powerful, is being able to make that aggressive of a shift on curve from 1 to 2. Combining that with something like a Bibbidi Boppity Boo, where you can return a chosen character to your hand and play one of the same cost or less. If you end up finding like a Pete Bad Guy or even a Lucifer just to get the discard party rolling early, you can do that on turn 3 or even turn 2, actually, because you can use the Queen on turn 2 when you shift her in to sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo and just drop Lucifer immediately onto the board and start discarding your opponent's hands. But the more conventional way that we're going to play this deck is we're going to drop Queen on 1 or another 1 drop. We're going to play Ursula Deceiver here. When you play this character, choose an opponent's chosen opponent reveals their hand, and you discard a song card of your choice. Almost every deck at this point, because of the strong nature of songs, is running songs, most likely keeping at least one of them in their hand. This is the new counter to Be Prepared. It's the new counter to A Whole New World, where you get to look at their hand, understand not only what their hand looks like. Let's not overlook that fact. You get to understand what their curve looks like, and maybe what their ability is to deal with certain units of yours. Or one of the easiest and only ways to really deal with Prince John, because he's got Ward, is grab your swords on 5. Like, your opponent is desperately looking for grab your sword, so that way they can do 2 to everything and not have to target it if you ever just decide to not quest with Prince John. If you play Ursula on 2 and ditch their grab your swords, Prince John is free for turn after turn after turn if you know you've got him in your hand. Queen of Hearts Wonderland. This is a card that may not see the final list depending on how potent the villain package is, but we're running a lot of villains in this deck. Whenever this character quests, your other villain characters also gain +1 lore this turn. So you quest with Queen of Hearts to start, and then you can quest with the rest of your units, and you almost have that burst potential to make up ground or start to close the game out once you've had that board control and you've whittled down your opponent's hand. We've got Hades for some sort of recursion if we need it. If we need to be able to pull back a Prince John or pull back an Ursula Deceiver, again, for more discard potential. I mean, if you get to 6 ink, you can drop Hades, pull Ursula back, immediately drop Ursula, and be able to do it again. Like, that's great. Lucifer can discard 2 cards or 1 action card from your opponent's hand. Pete Bad Guy is maybe the most interesting card here, I think, in this list, because you have a lot of recursion here in this list with Ursula Deceiver of all. Ursula is, whenever this character sings a song, you may play whenever this character sings a song, you may play the song again from the discard free and then put it on the bottom of your deck. So you play something like a Sudden Chill, a Bare Necessities, which is a new 2 drop. Choose an opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character of their choice. World's Greatest Criminal Mind, in case they do have 2 characters that have 5 attack or more. You can kill 2 units in 1 stone. Or Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo to be able to play something or recur them from their deck multiple times. You've got a lot of options to be able to play a song once, but get the value of it, of actually playing it, quote unquote, twice, which triggers Pete on multiple occasions. Whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 attack this turn. And if he has 7 attack, he gets +2 lore, so he can quest for 4. Playing a singular song when you've got Ursula, Deceiver of All on the board counts twice and will get you to that threshold for Pete to be able to quest for 4. So it's very easy to be able to get to Pete's threshold, along with, let's say you give him the buff from the Queen, which is a +4. He's got that 7 attack. Vicious Betrayal, you get the +2 for it being an action, and +3 for being for him being a villain. And we're playing a lot of villains, so we're going to take advantage of that extra boost that Vicious Betrayal gets in here. Now, Vicious Betrayal is a little bit of an unconventional card that you don't see in a whole lot of decks, but because we're running a lot of villains, and I have a suspicion that this card is going to be very, very useful as a reactive tool to help one-shot locations. When your opponent is trying to combo out and drop these new fun, stylish locations that they want to be able to play and get value off of, they're starting to spend time shifting their units into these locations. You can almost one-shot with any of your other units on board, whatever those locations are.
You get to be the villain that says, no, don't play with the fun new thing.
Right. You're not, which is what discard is, truthfully, in the first place, is you don't get to have fun. You don't get to play your fun stuff. And then we've got the tried and true Hypnotize to be able to discard and draw. You Have Forgotten Me, discard 2 cards, all of which, if you have Prince John on the board, is netting you cards. Every time they discard one, you draw a card. So in theory, we've got a card engine going here on multiple fronts, and we should be discarding our opponent's entire hand constantly while we are working towards questing quite strong. And if you do need to slow the game down while you work towards that final burst, John Silver is great at stopping your opponent from questing and making them challenge into units. So this deck plays like a true mid-range where you're playing out on curve and just disruptive as all get out.
Yeah, this is one of the decks that I'm really interested by, because it's going to be the first iteration in our post-Floodborn meta of a discard deck that does not rely on Bucky and a bunch of Floodborns, which is strong but unreliable, I found, and plays especially hard into Grab Your Swords. And now
it's very fragile.
It's fragile. That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah. And now you have significantly more resilient characters. You've got a lot more characters with 3 defense here or more. You obviously have ways to peel removal from your opponent's hand in terms of Ursula and the Bare Necessities. One thing that I was thinking about that could be another great option is I think it's called Strike a Good Match or something like that, which allows you to, it's another song, allows you to thin through your deck. So if you need more consistency, you can do that and really shape your hand so that you dig and find the things you're looking for. Another great song to go with Ursula, Deceiver of All. But like at the end of the day, whether or not like the villain package works out, the like core 45 cards of this deck feels like it's going to be in strong contention for the best discard deck in the game. Discard just got consistent, and that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, it's going to be consistent. It's not really going to be hard to mulligan for, and you've got I think the hardest and maybe the hardest like ink number to figure out in a lot of decks, and seems to be the linchpin for most decks that aren't, I'll say, a true aggro deck. Right. But if you're mid-range, or if you are either combo, or if you're into late game, to me, it's anywhere between 2 and 4. So I'm gonna nail it at 3. And this deck has now just given you absolute like rock stars at that 3-drop slot of density that says, even if I don't hit my Prince John, which is one of the fragile pieces that you had in the other list that DBN was mentioning, that Floodborn based Emerald Steel deck, is if you didn't see Prince John, and I ran into it this last weekend. There's a local player. Shout out to Ben in my local play group. He is phenomenal as a discard player in Emerald Steel. But I played him this past weekend, and we had an occasion where he never saw Prince John, and the deck really struggled to get going. Yeah. And that's the nature of that deck. Is even if you see Bucky, but you don't see Prince John, you just run out of cards. And this deck is almost a little bit more insulated now from missing Prince John.
I really like the deck becoming free of Bucky. I do think that there is a world where you put in Flynn Rider still, even though it doesn't have the Bucky synergy. But at the end of the day, like Bucky was the weird consistency issue with the deck, where if you drew a bunch of Floodborn but didn't draw the Bucky, you couldn't discard cards, right? And
or if you end up not wanting to have Pete in this deck, or some of the other villain package, you cut Vicious Betrayal, you cut Pete, find another really solid like mid-range card, add Poor Unfortunate Souls.
The
1-drop that says when you challenge this card,
the Cursed Merfolk.
You have to Cursed Merfolk. I'm sorry.
Yes,
it's the same. It's the same Ursula. Ursula Nonza. The Cursed Merfolk. Cursed Merfolk on 1, questing for 2, and saying if you challenge me, you have to discard a card.
Mm-hmm.
That's another great option for this deck as a 1-drop.
There's going to be a way to build this as an aggro list. Right now, I do think I prefer it how this is in terms of being a more flexible mid-rangey approach. But I do think that in my mind, it's become clear that Amber and Emerald should be the premier discard color combination for the next set. I mean, I not to call my shot here, but I do feel like the Emerald Steel discard experiment has run its course. And I just don't see how the extra redundancy of discard actions from You Have Forgotten Me and the Bare Necessities don't push it over the top into a legit, consistent performer, as opposed to the big issue has always been consistency. And like, I'm really impressed with this list.
Thank you. And for $278, this list can be yours. You can play this list all that you want to.
This one's going to be way cheaper, I think, than even the Chernabog list.
Yes, I would say so as well, with the exception of maybe some of the Ursulas and the other legendaries.
The Ursulas will be pricey. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is kind of the thing that's really making this feel super strong is the Ursulas. Mm-hmm. But
the Ursula combo potential. But
yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for our mid-range lists. We'll be back here shortly with another video in the coming days as we lead up to the Inklands local game in-game release in person, followed shortly by the big box stores. If you like what we're doing, like we've said before, come see us on YouTube, and we'll see you on the next video.